The 2023 National. This episode is episode 2. We're going to talk about buying and negotiating. This kind of go hand in hand. But this is just kind of a how-to video from me, myself, and I, Jameel. I own a shop here in Gainesville, Florida, and we have been going to the National now for 8+ years. So that's the selling side of it. Probably been in this space for 15+ years. So when it comes to buying, when it comes to negotiating, when on singles or wax or memorabilia or whatever it is, I think we know a little bit about it. Not a lot, but a little bit about it. And I want to share some tips with you guys as you go to this incredible event that's happening in just a few weeks in Rosemont, we all know, at the National 2023. So this whole video was just simply about that, and I think many people don't think about the idea of buying and being smart about how they buy, because when you get there, it's quite impulsive. It's more than a kid in a candy shop. It's a kid in a candy factory. It's a massive amount of stimuli, and your appetite, it's like, you know how you go to a buffet and you haven't eaten and you get a plate that's super full and then you go back to eat it all and you can't? That's exactly what the National is, except it's not a buffet. It's the amount of money you have left to finish that food. And usually a lot of people spend all their money before they get what they want. So as we think about this and we think about buying and negotiating, there is one key thing that I encourage everyone to understand, and that time and medium are so important when it comes to an event that's really only 4 or 5 days, and sometimes there's people that are there for only 1, 2, 3 days. So having money ready to go, usually cash is the best way, and making sure you're being respectful of other people's time is probably the two most important things, I think, when it comes to buying and negotiating. So just speaking about a medium transaction, how you pay, cash is always the best. PayPal and Venmo are another form that I've seen people accept over the past years. They usually will have a little QR code or something along those lines. And then sometimes in the bigger transactions, you might want to wire money. The one thing about wiring money that gets a little tricky is service can sometimes be poor, cellular and Wi-Fi. So if you're trying to do something in a timely manner, wire is very tricky, especially if you are doing something over the weekend. So just keep that in mind. If you have cash, that's the best way to buy. Do not, and I repeat this, do not try and withdraw from an ATM at the National. I've seen it done many times. The line is longer than the line to the pearly gates. I mean, it is so stinking long, and the cash machine only has a fixed amount, and you're not gonna get that money that way. So make sure you bring cash with you. Make sure you don't try and last minute it. That's always something I encourage people to think about before they go. Also, if you know a lot of friends who have a lot of cash, maybe you can talk to them beforehand and say, hey, could I send you some Venmo? Could I send you some PayPal? Could you work something out with me where if I need to, I can send you some digital money for cash? So that's one of the things that I think is probably the number one step when it comes to buying at the National, is having that fund on hand quickly. There are some people who accept crypto. There are some people who use Cash App, some people who use Zelle. Those are other things that I think are emerging, but it's not always the best. There's a lot of people that don't use those. So if that's how you're going to pay, it might be tricky. So remember, cash and secondary PayPal and Venmo. All right, so as we talk about time, that's an element that most people are going to ignore. They're gonna, unfortunately, think that the dealers have lots and lots of time, when the truth is there could be 10, 15, and some cases at our booth, we have a 20 by 30 booth, 30, 40, 50 people around your booth trying to buy and get someone's attention, trying to negotiate. And I'm not gonna sit there and I'm not gonna spend 15 minutes going back and forth here. That's just kind of how it is. Now on the higher end transactions, I know that kind of requires a little bit more masseuse in that, right? You have to kind of massage the deal a little bit better. There's some back and forth. But let me be honest, most dealers that are at the National, they could care less about the back and forth. They want to make the deal. They're trying to make it happen quickly, and they want you to be able to move along and get your card as quick as possible. So usually what a good rule of thumb is, if you're buying cards that are under $100, there's usually going to be leeway with most dealers. And of course, $5 and $10 increments are the best. If you start offering, $63 for a $75 card, I'm gonna look at you funny. So, I mean, just be sensible about it, be quick with it. Again, making change is also another problem, but be smart in how you use that time. One thing I would also say is be direct. Be direct with the person you're buying from. It's not an insult, but you can always ask, and I do this a lot too when I buy from people, are these your cards? That's one statement that I think is so valuable, is that when you walk up to a booth and you say, are these your cards? Maybe they're not somebody's cards, and you could start to negotiate with somebody and they'll get to a point and they'll say, you know what, I need to call somebody, he's not here. Well, you just wasted 5, 10, 15 minutes, and everybody is a loser in that situation. So I'd encourage you to ask that first. Make sure that you're making, at our booth, we're going to have other people who are consigners, plus we're going to have our shop inventory. So, when you come up, making sure that that's Meelypops. Or if you're trying to make a deal and you see one end of the booth and you have cards on this other end of the booth, they may not be able to make the deal because you're combining maybe 2 or 3 people's inventory. So be thinking about that. So be direct, be straightforward with people, be confident. I think that's another thing that is so important. I mean, this is maybe from my end, right? As the dealer, I've noticed that with so many people who come up, and you can tell they really want the card, but they're not confident in it, right? And so they say, hey, would you take $60? And it's marked 100, and I'll say, and I know they're not confident, and I'll say, no, I'll take $90. And then how about 75? No, I'll take $90. And then 85? No, I'll still take $90. So like, be confident in what you're doing, make eye contact, be friendly with people. I think that's always going to go a long way. Don't be a jerk. There are a lot of jerks that I've dealt with at the National. Side note, it's not smart to try and do deals on top of somebody else's table. They've spent thousands and thousands of dollars for those tables, and I've seen it happen. I've seen people get in fights over this, where people are cross-dealing. So to say, like, they're selling a card to somebody, like I'm selling to you right now on this table, and this table is not mine or this person's. It's the actual dealer right there who spent time for that. So be mindful of that, be respectful. That'll get you in a lot of trouble. Lastly, when it comes to time, don't lie. The reason why I say that is I've had many people come up to me, beg, tell me it's for their PC, tell me how much it means to them, blah, 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 blah. They, and they give me this really, really low offer. And there have been times when I've really believed these people, and maybe I just don't trust anybody anymore, but they've literally posted it on eBay 6 hours later. Or I've seen it in another person's case sold. And I just kind of, one of those things is once you've done that to me as someone who has been in the industry and knows a lot of people, I'm going to remember that, right? I just think it's kind of scummy to do that. If you want to flip it, that's fine. Either tell the person that, or you just don't say anything. Just be interested in the card, but don't lie about it. That's one thing that I think will waste a lot of people's time and will create a bad reputation for you. And then lastly, this is kind of a last resort, but you can always come back. So as you're working with people and they look super busy and you can't get in, and you're gonna, you got to be somewhere in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, or you need to move on, you can always come back. Don't feel like you can't do that. There's a lot of cards at this event. I think that it's impossible for everyone that comes in there to see all of the things that are there. I think that that most people are only going to probably visually see about 15 to 20% of the inventory at the National. I'd be interested to see what you say in the comments too. 15 to 20% in my mind is what I think you'll probably be able to capture the whole event, unless you're going there directly and you're going to walk through every booth. But I would say that maybe 25% of the inventory, because there's so much stuff on the tables, behind the tables. There's so much stuff at these auction houses. There's so much stuff at the manufacturers. So be thinking about that when you are using your time at the National. Beware of the trade monster. Here's what I mean. When you're negotiating and you're buying from a dealer or really anybody at the show, and you throw in the idea of trade after the fact, you've come to a price or you negotiated, it does one of two things. One, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because that's not what we came to do here. We were trying to negotiate for money, right? For the price of the card. I didn't want to take in trade. I don't want your trade maybe necessarily. So make sure if you are trying to do like a money and trade thing, that the person knows that from the beginning, not at the end. I've seen it so many times happen to us and to happen to other people, where the dreaded trade monster makes his appearance at the end of the negotiation, and that's not a good look. So my friends, listen, when you're working with whoever you're working with at the show, being direct, being confident, and being just like outright with your intentions for what's going on is helpful. I think sometimes people think in negotiations, your intentions being hidden are leverage, when sometimes that can really backfire or not help you at all. Again, like I've said before, if you're there to flip or sell, that's fine. You don't have to tell me that, but don't lie about it, right? Just be very forthright in that. And this is kind of going along that same train of thought, in that if you bring out the trade idea later after you've negotiated with a dealer, that dealer might get really upset, because that's not what they had, in their mind as they were talking with you about that card. Another thing that I want to talk about too, outside of the trade monster, is this idea, honestly, that maybe dealers who are static, who are permanent, who are fixed, have boots, maybe in this day and age in 2023, that's actually negative. Maybe that's not beneficial. I was considering this thought, I always kind of go back and forth with the idea of who's a dealer, who's not a dealer, how we interpret that. But for those of you who are out and about, buying and negotiating is actually a super cool opportunity for you to talk to so many more people than maybe I will. I know there's a lot of dealers at the shows. I've seen them, museum dealers where they're not looking to sell anything. Dealers who will never make eye contact, dealers who look like they got 2 hours of sleep for the last 3 days. There's always going to be those people. You're going to find them at the National. But, surround yourself with people that you can work with, you can talk to, you can negotiate with. It's only going to help you in the long run. And the last thing I'll say with this, when it comes to buying and negotiating, dealers and people who are seasoned vets of the National, they are exactly that. They've been seasoned for years and years and years and years. So trying to pull one over on them, trying to fake a comp, trying to, I've seen this happen before, negotiate on a card that's not not even your card, but you know is at another booth, and that you could go get that card, and then if you get that card, you could do this with it and this with that. Listen, we know what you're trying to do, and it's just a huge, colossal waste of time, makes everybody upset. Don't do that. People who are behind, a lot of these showcases are seasoned, and they know what they're doing, and they're not going to be, taken, out back to be burned. So I would just consider all those things. Hopefully this is helpful when it comes to buying and negotiating at the National. If you have any comments, please post below. Let us know what you think, and I'll see you. We're going to be there with Indie Card Exchange at the National this year. We're going to be teamed up. It's going to be a great area right by PSA, right by eBay, right by Golden, all those areas. Come visit us. We'd love to sell you some cards. We'd love to negotiate, do some cool deals with you, and check out episode 3, which we're going to post in a couple days, which is all about you selling items at the National, which is actually a whole other world, and it's very important. All right, see you.